So, welcome everybody to this nice sky and blue ocean here. It's David Thompson from Aviva's Innovation Projects Group. Um, I'm in VR again, and I'm on my Oculus in my hotel room this time. And I'm going to demonstrate to you the latest version of our VR application. So there's my Oculus controllers. And when I hit this button, this is a Unity application. It's going to load my Aviva model. So you can see there, took about 2 seconds, and I'm now in the bridge of a ship. Just going to teleport, look out the window, so you can see there it's the bow of this vessel, which is actually a ro-ro vessel built by a German shipyard, probably about 20 years ago now. So when we first looked at VR about a year ago, we had the technology to view large models like this, but we didn't have too much understanding and knowledge of how to put people in VR and give them a comfortable experience. And through a bad implementation of Xbox controller, we made many of the users, including myself, a little bit VR sick. Which of course wasn't great for people's adoption of VR. So what I've tried to do with this application is really to make VR, first of all, a comfortable experience, something that people are willing to use as a tool every day, but also something that's really useful. So comfort was the first thing I wanted to do. Making it a multiplayer experience was the second thing I wanted to do. Giving people hands, of course, was an important thing, but also making a so-called spectator view so that people could watch people in VR or collaborate with people in VR without having to put the headset on, which is, of course, just simply not a comfortable thing for everybody. So we've made this application. It's been built in Unity, which gives us a few advantages. So first of all, it supports all of the PC-based headsets out there. This is an Oculus with touch controllers. I'm using it in my hotel room. It's fairly portable. We recently got it working on the Windows mixed reality headsets, and it works on a Vive as well. And I'm just going to check here what kind of frame rate we're running here. So it is running at 90 frames per second, which is very important for VR comfort, something not to estimate. So that whole latency between moving your head and having the image updating is really imperceptible here. The model is about 90 million polygons. It's worth sort of geeking out on these numbers because that's a fairly large model by anybody's standards. We do have ambient occlusion turned on, as you can see here, this nice kind of shadowing effect around all the features. We do have some anti-aliasing turned on, but it's at the lowest setting because I'm recording on Open Broadcaster Studio at the same time. But we can, of course, this is running on my laptop, which you might be able to hear in the background, but of course on a desktop PC with a good NVIDIA card, it'll run with more of the anti-aliasing on and look far sharper in the distance. So I'm up on the bridge here by myself. As I said, the first thing I wanted to eliminate was motion sickness. So that frame rate is very important to have that frame rate up there at 90 or as close to that all the time, and that really reduces the motion sickness. It will go down during the making of this video simply because I'm using OBS to record, but we did implement some other features. So on my power wheel on the left hand here, I have teleport mode. Teleport's activated. I can see that on my tooltips here. I simply point at the ground where I want to go, and when I let go, I'm magically teleported there. So you'll see me turning here in sort of jerky movements. That's because I'm using the Oculus. I'm always facing towards the Oculus sensors. I'm sitting down actually, but I'll use these two buttons here to turn in 45-degree increments. With a Vive or Windows mixed reality, of course, you can just turn your body around in a more natural way. So teleport is, in some ways, it's a bit unnatural because you kind of are moving around the model in these kind of jerky movements. But compared to having the model move around you in a fly mode, it's far more comfortable. And of course, you can move around quite quickly like this. You can point down in the car deck there and move around any kind of larger model very quickly. The other thing we've done to help you move around is, so if I go to the bottom right here, I have a little iPad interface. This is basically just a tablet device. So we, as you can see, and we've put in here some key locations, and this interface, just to tell the story here, originally we had all the functions on the multiple buttons. As you can see here, there's 2 joysticks, there's 4 buttons on the top, and another 4 buttons on underneath the sort of trigger and side fingers. But that was quite a lot for people to kind of handle in the beginning, so we did put some of the interface onto a more traditional kind of form. Of course, this could be quite a rich interface here with many buttons that you simply select using this as a laser pointer. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to key locations. I'm going to go back up to the bridge. Then I'm going to use this again, and I'm going to go back down to the engine room. So sometimes teleport in here at the wrong height. Just going to go back up to my normal, this is standing height, even though I'm seated, just the way it's configured. So you can see here that the engine room looks very clear, that ambient occlusion is making everything pop out, even though this is all white geometry actually. And I can teleport around here, even where I don't have a deck here, into, I think, the separator room up here. And again, you can see how clear all of this looks. And something you don't really understand unless you're in VR is that this effect of real 3D. So of course, as you move around the model like this, you get the parallax. You can actually look behind things and underneath things. And that's why VR is so powerful. So I can actually use my normal sense of judgment to figure out if these things look right. And I can even use my hands to figure out how far apart these particular things are here. So we basically have our natural senses. So looking at the model, of course, is one thing. Exploring, getting to know a complex space like a ship is a very important thing. You get immediate sense of the volume, the distance it is up there, 1, 2, 3 decks, I think, up there to the forecastle, I think. We can see here warning lights. So VR is giving us immediately a greater sense of spatial awareness, and we can even say there that something that might look like a clash. However, limiting people to essentially teleporting at a human level, we found, is not the best way to look at a model and see all the features. So let's take this thing up here that looks like a clash. Traditionally, the only way that I would have been able to move up there is to fly myself up. So this is just using the controller to zoom through the model like this. And what we found was that it does make some people motion sickness. So teleport, pretty practically nobody, I think 1 in 1,000. Fly mode is much more like 1 in 10. You do get used to it. It's a bit like sailing. But we found something purely by coincidence. We actually implemented a climb mode here, which was made specifically for climbing ladders using this kind of hand gesture that we use here and the grip buttons on the side of the controllers, as you can see there. But what we found is that if we activate this all the time, it's actually an extremely good way to move yourself up to a detail like this that's obviously not going to be visible from floor height. So in real life, you'd have to get a ladder and climb up here. On a screen, of course, in a CAD system, you would maybe be able to zoom into this area or run a clash check, but because of all the structure around it, you'd probably have to do a section cut and maybe hide show some of these objects like this big box underneath here. In VR, because I can essentially put myself into this tiny 2-3 centimeter gap there, or I can actually tell what it is, about 3 centimeters. I can see immediately if there's a clash here, and there's not. So that's a very good example of VR and this sort of locomotion method I've got. The reason this doesn't make people motion sick is that you're actually physically moving your hands, and this tricks your brain into thinking that you're controlling your movement through the world as you would be in real life instead of flying, which gives you this kind of illusion. And as you can see here, it's a great way to get into all the little details. You can see these little drainage holes here in the stiffeners on the hull, and that kind of detail that's extremely interesting to look at in VR. So I'm going to teleport back through here. I saw some interesting arrangement in here. Seems to be this brown box doesn't seem to be quite in the right place. So because it's a multiplayer app, of course you can put two people in here. We do see each other. If somebody else comes in here in VR, I'll see their hands and I'll see their headset. So we get some of the body language. My team have had all our meetings in VR to develop it. And I've actually done some demos with the guys in Norway and other parts of the world. But we've implemented some other very basic collaboration functionality. So we have markup here. I'm going to change the color of this. This takes a little bit of a while to catch on the Oculus, but I can simply freehand draw in here wherever I want. So this is basically some kind of freehand drawing. And we also implemented a very simple pipe routing mode. So if I start and then let's say I lock this direction and then this direction, and we've actually got X and Y mixed up here, as you might have noticed. Oh, then I need to go down this little tiny bit like this. So I can do a little sketch to indicate a little bit more accurately using this pipe routing mode, which is just a very simple orthogonal routing mode, to show where I might want to have an additional pipeline. I can rotate around this and have a good look at that. So we think these kind of tools, of course, these are just prototype versions of them, are going to be very useful for people who may want to do either a designer who wants to have a review during the design process, or somebody who's really looking at this from a subject matter point of view. So pretty amazing to be in this vessel. Like many things, it's much better with friends. We're trying to get this app out to early adopters and to people who are researching the use of VR, especially in design and operations. And I hope you found this interesting and hope you get a chance to try it and give my team some feedback in the future. So that's all from me. I'm going to take the headset off and sign out for tonight.